Once you find yourself in conflict with a narcissist, it's a virtual guarantee they're going to start playing head games with you. That's why I put together a new course. It's very extensive called Anger Games. I'm going to teach you how to manage anger and conflict with a narcissist. There's a link below that's going to show you how to register, and I hope that you find it to be very insightful. I'm hoping as you engage with other individuals, you use a great deal of common sense. By that I mean you apply sound judgment in the decisions you make with others, and you are known as being fair-minded and level-headed, and you understand what the norms are in your particular place, and you live according to healthy norms. In other words, you want to live for the common good. Now, when it comes to individuals caught up in their own patterns of narcissism, they can use common sense when we're talking about functional matters. In other words, there's a certain way to approach a task, and some of them can be quite good at it, or there are schedules to maintain, and so they'll use common sense when it comes to performances and things like that. Some of them do anyway. But then when it comes to engaging with other individuals, especially in the middle of conflict or when differences arise, some of the common sense that you would expect that an adult would use just goes completely flying out the window. When you differ from a narcissist, one of the common things that happens is their default tendency is to fall back into the ingredients that make up the pattern of narcissism. In other words, they have to stay in control. Raw selfishness takes over. They'll only see what benefits them. They don't really feel any need to understand and know you. They'd rather manipulate than coordinate. That's what I mean when I say they can have common sense until it comes to these psychological kinds of matters. Now, today I want to point out 3 very strong common sense suggestions that you've probably made towards that narcissist that triggers them. Not only do they not want to go along with you, but it actually brings out some pretty raw emotion from them. Let's take a look at it, and then I specifically want us to understand what it tells us about them when they can't even go along with you in these 3 things, and then let's figure out where we're going to go from there. Now, the first common sense suggestion that you might have with a narcissist, somebody that you're living with on an ongoing basis or working with, etc., is we need to have accountability in our relationship. And when I say accountability, the implication is there's an interconnectedness that we have with one another. Let's acknowledge our interconnectedness and keep that in mind as we make decisions. Now, it can be simple things like we have schedules that have some overlapping elements or time management requirements. Let's make sure that we do so in such a way that allows for that to happen in the smoothest way possible, or in the way that we manage our money, or how we handle the priorities. You have different priorities in mind. Let's make sure that we have a sense of accountability with respect to that. The way we do projects, we have certain standards and principles that we're going to maintain there. And who we associate with, that's going to impact how we do things. Let's be accountable. I mean, as a very simple illustration, it may be that you're going to spend a Saturday running errands, and so you say to someone, I'm going to be out for about 2 hours. I'll be doing these kind of things, and then I'll check back in, and maybe we can have lunch today. I mean, that's a very simple element of accountability. Or it may be that that you made a mistake, and then you can say to that other person, I know that I owe you one on that, and so I'll make good on that, and I'll make restitution. That's accountability. When you suggest accountability to the narcissist, you know what they're going to do? First thing, that is, I don't need you telling me what to do. I don't need you to control me. That's because that's what you're trying to do, and I'm not about to defer to you. I'm subservient to no one. I don't care about your needs. It's all about me anyway. And quite frankly, my needs are better, or my ways of doing things are better. So get off my back, will you? And you may be saying something like, I'm just asking for a little bit of openness in the way that we engage with one another. It's good for us to have a shared sense of moving forward. Work with me, will you? And the narcissist is like, no. And you can get their anger, you can get their stubbornness, your request, your suggestion for accountability can trigger them, and they can make all sorts of interpretations in the moment that simply are not valid. They're just not realistic, and obviously they're pulling upon who knows what kind of internal and historical pain and hurt. Now, another very simple common sense suggestion, a second one that you can make toward the narcissist is, let's make room for differences. Now, not only do we need to have accountability, but let's recognize we each bring certain distinctions to the relationship. Now, whether this is inside a family situation or family system, every person has their own distinctions there. Certainly in the public arena, we have quite a bit of difference and variance that's there. And so the common sense suggestion is let's be inclusive rather than exclusive, and let's allow for people to be uniquely who they are. Now, that word inclusive, a high percentage of narcissists think, I hate that word. To them, it's almost as though you're asking them to bring in people that are dirty or too different, and they don't want to go into that space. You see, the narcissist, when you suggest let's make room for differences, they think, well, one of us in this equation is right and one of us is wrong. Why do I need to worry about including you with all your wrong kind of things? There's no particular benefit to understanding you. Your different perspectives are a little more than just a nuisance to me. Get off my back, will you? And if you're too different, frankly, I don't have any use for you. If you look too different, if you believe differently from me, if you have different preferences, I don't want anything to do. Let's be clear, you're not my equal. And you're thinking, look, common sense says that there's so many different angles and preferences and nuances that we each bring. Let's make room for that. And the narcissist is like, you don't know who you're dealing with here. You need to make room for me, but I don't need to be inclusive toward you. And they don't like the word diversity either, because if you're too diverse, then that means that you're just a little bit more than a troublemaker. Now, a third common sense suggestion that you could make toward a narcissist is, like the rest of the world, you need to adjust and you need to be willing to learn and expand and grow and mature. Now, have you ever said anything like that to a narcissist? You need to adjust, you need to expand, you need to mature. Let's see what we can learn. That will trigger them like nothing else. As a simple example, if you and I have a difficulty or a strain between us, one of the common sense things says, well, we need to sit down and figure out, how did you arrive at this conclusion? And I'd like to share with you mine. And then maybe we can pick up on some nuances about one another that we didn't know as fully, and we can learn and we can grow. Or if we have raw emotion, it's necessary sometimes to pause and say, well, why is that raw emotion on the inside of me here? Why do I get angry like I do? Or why do I struggle with false conceptions of guilt? And why do I have so much defensiveness? And you know, there are times when you expose yourself as being less than perfect in those realms. Okay, can you grow? Can you learn? Or sometimes you feel perplexed by people and events and circumstances and unusual situations that come along. What life lessons do those circumstances represent? Now, the narcissist, when you suggest you need to grow or there's room for learning and expansion, they're thinking, hey, look, I already know everything I need to know. I'm a finished product. Don't you understand that? You need to grow, and I'll be more than happy to tell you what that growth is supposed to look like. But you know what? If you tell me I need to grow or I need to learn, that just tells me you're a complainer and I don't have any use for you. What can I possibly learn from someone like you? So here we have these narcissistic individuals, and we just say, let's just apply some common sense to our relationship. And when they are triggered by these kinds of simple suggestions, it tells us quite a bit about where they're coming from. First, it tells us these are people who are trapped by their own delusional thinking. And the starting point for their delusion is, I'm superior to you and I don't need any kind of input. It also tells us that they automatically will assume the victim's role when there's some sort of difference that comes along. If we differ, that means you're trying to make my life miserable, aren't you? It's like, no, I'm just simply being me. Can we just talk about it? They can't do that. It also reveals their inability to trust. There's a paranoia that they lead with, and that's directly linked to their contrarian reactions to you. Also, it reveals they would prefer to be a bully than someone who blends. It's like, well, I like pounding people into the ground. Makes me feel good. I don't know about you, but it works for me. To them, accepting other individuals in the midst of differences, it reveals that when they accept other individuals' differences, it almost feels like they're betraying their own belief system. If they say, well, I need to make room for you and I need to listen to you even though you're different, it's like, well, but you have such a different worldview from me. It's like, well, okay. But it's like, I don't want to betray myself by listening to you. That's how they process it. Also, it reveals that to them, being right and being superior is far more important than being loving. To them, it's a competition. It also reveals that their analytical skills are woefully inadequate. In fact, they just, especially in the psychological realm, they have what we would refer to, or what I would refer to as psychological ineptitude. And then it also says that they have so many unresolved emotional issues that their common sense is completely lost. They have too much of a conflicted understanding of how to use guilt or their insecurities or their anger or their anxieties. And as a result, when you bring common sense to them, just like these three things that I mentioned, it's like it triggers them because their emotions are so raw. So, narcissists think if you try to put out all that common sense onto me, all you're doing is trying to beat me, and I'm going to beat you first. How about that? And my thinking is, hey, look, all I'm asking for is basic accountability or inclusion or growth and openness to learning. That's it. And if you and I can't even agree on something as basic, as simple as that, then we're going to have a minimalist relationship if we can even have something at all. Now, I hope that videos such as this can give you some good awareness of what you're up against. I know that so many of you can just be shaking your head as you listen to this, like, yeah, I live with this every day. I'm so pleased that I'm allowed to be a part of your growth journey. If you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do so. We'll keep more videos coming towards you. I know that there are times when you're dealing with something like this, you could use some therapy. I've been sponsored for years by the people at BetterHelp.com. It's an online therapy resource. We've learned through the pandemic that online therapy can be quite effective. And so all you have to do is go through the link that we have provided below the video here and answer a few questions, and you could get the help that you need. It can be so helpful for somebody to sit down and say, well, I want to apply common sense. Let's talk about who you are, where you're coming from, what your history is, what you're up against. Get the help as the need is there. Now, in addition, after I've retired from my counseling practice, I put together courses which reflects 40 plus years in the therapy office, and each course has at least 25 teaching videos, and each video has handouts and guided questions. We have anger games. This is me about establishing boundaries, free to be, ready, set, connect. There are links below the video here as well as on my website. Speaking of my website, we also have access there to my webinars, which are 90-minute presentations, which are of a very different nature, and they've proven to be quite popular. You can look those up along with our articles, access to the podcast, my books, plenty of resources. Now, there can be times when you want to sit down and say, hey, I've got a suggestion, or there's some things that we could do that would improve our relationships, especially in differences. And just the simplest suggestion that you have to that narcissist can trigger them and bring out the worst. And it's like, okay, this is a child in an adult's body. I can't reason with someone like that. And so take your cues and make your adjustments accordingly. You want to go ahead and stay inside of your healthiness and don't allow them to set your pace. So hold that in mind. And as you do, despite their lack of common sense and despite their lack of or their inability or unwillingness to flow with you, I'm hoping you can commit yourself to being a person of steadiness and civility. And in the end, I'm hoping it allows you to be more of that person of peace.